What's up, guys? It's your boy Shaka here, coming to you with another episode of Marauders. Today we're going to be talking about weapons and putting them in a tier list. Now, the reason I'm going to be doing this is so that I can help out new players decide what weapons are more viable, what weapons are more important, and what weapons you should be considering or not considering, and why. Some of them are going to be a bit more available, some of them are going to be a bit more rare. Depending on the type of playstyle that you have, you might have completely different perspective on this, so please don't take my ideas and the things that I do in this as the be all and end all. This is just my perspective and it's based on my playstyle. You might think completely different thoughts about certain weapons, and that's totally fine, but this is just based on what I think is the best for my viewers and what I think should be something that you should consider. So today we're going to be talking about pistols first. What I'm doing is bringing up the Marauders compendium, which is going to be linked in the description below. So to start off with, I'm going to say we've got a really good contender for number one. It's the Mosin. You guys might have seen my video already. Emotional damage. It is an insanely good sidearm. It is the best pistol in the game, I would say, by a long shot. There's a couple of other guns that might be able to instantly headshot. You can see the TTK headshot. It's an instant one kill without any helmet. But as you start to scroll down, even when the level 5, it's only the wall rod and the Mosin. Once we start getting down to level 10s, level 11s, that's the only one-shot headshot. I think it's a really good weapon. I think it's a lot of fun to use. Even if you don't one-shot headshot level 13s or level 12s, I think the Mosin stops people in their tracks. I think it's a great weapon to start a fight with. I think that the Mosin can really do well. If you can click heads, you can have a lot of fun with this gun. Even if you don't kill them in the first shot, if you get them down, even just with one shot to the head, they're going to be scared. They're not going to do anything but run and heal. And if they do push you, then you've got either the Mosin secondary shot to finish them off, or pull out some other weapon and finish the job off pretty quickly. Now, in terms of the Mosin, I think at this point in time, when I'm making this video, I would say that the Mosin is S tier, and it's probably going to be in the A category when we start going through the regular weapons. The Mosin, just you can see all of the stats here. The reload time is pretty negligible. It's actually one of the better reload times. The Mosin is a clapper. It is super fun to use. A lot of people get sent back to the death screen almost immediately with this gun if you've got the wrong helmet on. And you know what? Even if somebody has a level 12 or a level 13 and they have a bit of pain, they've taken a bit of damage, and there's a little white bar in their health, if you get hit by a Mosin Brez, you're going back to that death screen. Doesn't matter what type of helmet you have on. This gun is insane. Now, in terms of the government, I would say as a sidearm, it's probably going to be up there as well. It ranks as the fourth one on the list. It's definitely got a pretty solid TTK, maybe not as good as the M712 for its fire rate, but in terms of a government, even the bots, I find the government and the stamp bots are actually one of the scarier ones because they do hit so hard. So in terms of sidearms, I would have to say that the government and the stamp would probably be up in the A-B category. I don't necessarily agree that sidearms are that important unless you're talking about the Mosin, but if we're talking about just sidearms as a category, I would have to say that the government and the stamp are probably pretty high on that list. The Luger, God, I would have to say that it's definitely D tier, if not lower than that. I'm not a fan at all of the Luger. The Luger is pretty dog water. I might have said this before, but I don't really appreciate how bouncy it is, the recoil on it. You know, some people might argue that if you put a silencer on it from the Mauser, that it's a 3-tap headshot gun for any helmet level. But honestly, like, good luck trying to hit 3 shots on a seasoned player with a Luger. You know, it's just, unless they're sitting in a corner or standing still and you're getting the drop on them, I don't find the Luger to be that reliable or that enjoyable in any capacity. Even in Raider mode, I am running as quickly as I can to get rid of it. I have never done the PO8 mission, the raid objective where you need to kill 5 bots with a PO8. I think it's even though it's free, you get it in the rust bucket, it's a distraction. There's no way you're going to do very well with this gun, so I just don't suggest it. Now, if we're talking about the Mauser, I think even if it's not kitted, although you can get the kitted attachments, the extended clip, the stock on it. I think the stock on it with the extended clip with it in full auto is one of the stronger guns. Even if you're just running Timmy loadouts, I would suggest running this gun. This gun is definitely going to be way better than a Luger, even though it's a little bit more pricey. But if you're trying to do Timmy loadouts as a newer player, I would say the Mauser is probably one of the metrics for it being so successful and so high up would be the fact that it is so easy to acquire. You get a bunch of them when you start the game, as well as it's lower on the rung of things you need to do with the traders to unlock it. So definitely grab that gun if you're doing Timmy loadouts. And then if you can get the craftable unlock for the Obres, I would say grab that one. But if you don't like single fire bolt action sidearms, the Mauser is a really good gun to laser people with. It doesn't have hardly any recoil, even with without the attachments. You do run out of ammo pretty quickly with 10 shots in full auto, so definitely keep that in mind. Now I would say the Webley, although it is a bit of a better ammo type, I would probably put it in the C category. I don't really have a good time with it. I find that the sights are quite ugly and the recoil on it is insane. I've never had a successful run with a Webley. I would say it's probably one of those things that if you're doing meme runs or if you're really successful with trying to humiliate people with this gun, I would say I don't think I've ever been killed by a Webley. I don't think I've ever recalled a time where I've died to a Webley. So we're even getting close to the D category with this gun. Personally, maybe some other people have had better luck with it, but the Webley, I don't like it. You know, even maybe the government would go down into the B category if we're looking at stats on this. Generally speaking, I find that these weapons, anything in the B, C, D is just a distraction. Unless you're in raider mode or you're desperate, you know, pick up these sidearms over a Luger or over a Webley, but in the grand scheme of things, just distractions in my opinion. Now the flare pistol, before it got changed, I think there's a bug right now where it doesn't actually do a one-shot headshot anymore, but there's a video that I had posted and I'd have a lot of fun with the flare pistol. It would probably be in the A category if it still did one-shot headshot people, just with the fact that it does still kill people one-shot headshot. I wouldn't say it's S tier because it does have almost like a lag time and a drop to the shot itself, but in terms of it being pretty scary to fight against, the flare pistol used to be and could very well go back to that one-shot headshot status once it's been fixed. But for now we're going to put it in the D category, but that's just with an asterisk saying at this time the flare pistol doesn't work. It doesn't hurt anybody, but don't use it. But it could very well be back in the A category at some point. The well rod, you know, it could be argued that the well rod is just as memey and just as powerful, just slightly not as powerful as the Obres. So I'm saying it's probably just a shade under the S tier. So in terms of categories of guns that you can use that are, you know, of the meta, of importance, maybe these three would be the only ones that I would choose, that I would ever run with any of these other in their categories. And then if the flare pistol does go back to its unbugged format of one-shot headshotting, I would say, you know, Mosin, the Mauser would be next. I would definitely pick the flare pistol over the well rod, but if I was trying to meme and have fun and do a cheap loadout, I would definitely choose the Mosin Obres. And we've got the club. I would probably put the club either in B or in between A and B. The only issue I find is that while you can use it as a viable sidearm or hip fire or, you know, generally just ADSing, I find that the durability on this gun flies through. It is incredibly fast to the point where I would probably bring two of these clubs. I want to say there's probably been like 1 or 2 times where I've died to a club. So it's definitely, I hesitate to put it in the same category as these guys, just to not lead you guys astray. So maybe we'll keep it in with the 1911s, just for the fact that I don't really rely on it too much. It's one of those things that even if I do bring it in as a meme loadout, the club, I would have to bring 2 of them and a lot of ammo. And even then, it's not one of those guns that I would find enjoyable or something that I would take very seriously. Probably closer to a B category is what I would call this one. All right, so let's move on to the rest of the guns here. Okay, so we'll put these guys down into D for now, just so that I have them there, and we'll move ourselves over to the SMG category. So first up on the list would be the M45. I have to say 9mm weapons are definitely not my favorite. As you can see, it's pretty low on the list. It's actually mid-tier, but I would actually say that this gun is pretty impressive. If you're ever in a bind and you have to choose between some of the other SMGs, I would have to say that we're talking about B to C. I'm going to put it in C for now just because there is such a breadth of other options out there, and I would have to say that that's probably where that's going to reside. Now, in terms of the Heavy Thompson, I think it has its viability. Is really good for covering up your head, protecting your head from headshots, especially against the Red Baron. The Red Baron is just lasering people in the head. But I think that if you played against a player that knows what they're doing, the shield covers up so much of the area where you can actually shoot somebody that if they go left or right, you can lose sight of where they're at. And it can be disorienting. It can be one of those things that I haven't really used it that much, and I certainly haven't died to the Heavy Thompson very often. I find that it's one of those things that it's almost like a distraction, similar to some of the pistols in the bottom here. I would personally probably put that closer to a C, but in terms of how powerful it is and how heavy it hits, I would have to say that we're talking about a Thompson here, which definitely is one of the heavier damage guns, and I've definitely had some pretty good success with it, so I've got to say that that's probably going to be where it stays. In terms of the MAT 49, it's another one of those weapons. There's a lot of availability for it, especially with it being in the trader, so that's why I would probably put it to a B. I know it did get a little bit of a nerf. It does take quite a few shots to kill somebody with it now. Where are we at here with the MAT 49? Yeah, it's definitely on the lower end. But in terms of movement shooting, if you have this with a stock on the side and you have two of them, just to make sure you don't overshoot your durability on one of them, if you're just trying to do purely movement shooting and doing hip fire only, it's definitely one of those guns that I would pull out against a lot of bots to not give away what type of weapon I have, and it's definitely very available to be used at hand whenever that trader comes up. So I would want to say that that's in the B level, akin to maybe where the Heavy Thompson might be closer to the C, just because it isn't so readily available. It is one of those weapons that you do have to find in the vault, so I don't necessarily like the idea that these are side by side, but if I were to probably put this anywhere, it would be this one would be lower and the MAT 49 would be a little bit higher on the pecking order. Now, in terms of the MP40, the MP40 is another one that is very readily available. It's one of those guns that I personally, for whatever reason, die to exorbitant amount of times. I die to it almost a meme amount of times. Like, it's just so funny how often the MP40 is the one gun that just takes me down. So there is some viability to it in the sense that it does hit very hard. Do have it higher on the list here, and especially when we're talking about a suppressed MP40, talking about a pretty solid TTK. Not as good as maybe the suppressed Mauser, the Baron weapon, but a little bit lower than the Thompson. However, I personally cannot seem to handle the bounciness of the MP40, but if you can, you can run something that is low-hanging fruit in the sense that it is very available, it's craftable, and when you get it full kitted from the vault or maybe from crafting certain components of it, I would say that it's pretty viable to the degree that it would probably be higher up on the B list compared to the MAT 49. But personally, I would have to say that it sticks to B because I'm not really that good with it. The PPSH probably stays in A for me. It kind of starts to get close to B, but if we're talking about guns that are viable and that I actually quite enjoy, I would say that the PPSH edges the B category because it does have the attachment for the drum mag, so you do have a large magazine. It does have a considerable amount of recoil, but if you can control it, it is a very strong weapon. It used to be a little bit stronger, but it did get balanced a little bit, and I think that the recoil has been increased and maybe there's a bit more spread to it. It used to be one of those weapons that if you heard, you had to really respect, and I would say even within the 5-meter range or from a close distance, it is still a very, very strong weapon. I will be putting out a video for camping and ratting where I wipe a 4-man with this thing, and it is a really fun gun to use. Even in hip fire, I would say that this gun is still quite viable, but it has to be a pretty close proximity. But yeah, because it is also a 10mm, I would say that it's definitely going to be more of a hard hitter than some of the other SMGs in the categories. Now, speaking of maybe a smaller caliber weapon, SMG, it would be the Uzi. Now, the Uzi, whenever it has a metal stock, which you can only find in the vaults, I would say that that would probably edge the PPSH, especially with an extended clip. We're talking about a wooden stock, which is more akin to maybe using it in an ADS format. The Uzi probably is one of those guns that I don't necessarily think I would rely on, but whenever it is a metal stock, I would definitely say that it's a lot of fun, and it's definitely one of those guns that I definitely enjoy using. If it's not fully kitted, if it doesn't have a stock on the end, if it doesn't have the extended clip or the suppressor, I would have to say it's definitely one of the lower ends. As you can see here, the damage on an Uzi is really not that good at all. I'm surprised it's so low even when it is suppressed. It doesn't really add too much to it, but in terms of it being viable for hip fire, I would say yeah, metal stock, and definitely an extendo clip on that thing, which is craftable, so that's not too bad. But definitely if it doesn't have the extended clip on it, it would probably be closer to the B category, or maybe even the C category. If you're just buying it from the trader, I would definitely say that it's not one of those weapons that I would go too far above into the Bs. If it's not kitted at all, definitely Cs. I'm not a fan of it in most regards if it doesn't have an extended clip, but if it doesn't have a stock, then it's going to be quite wild. But in terms of it being metal stock Uzi with a suppressor, extended clip, and you're using it with hip fire, it's very viable. And even if you're crouching with it and hip fire, its spread is laser focused. It's quite a fun gun to use. Yeah, it just barely stays in the A category. I would say it's probably an A- gun. It's definitely not one of those guns that I would suggest to people unless it's something that you can only buy in the trader and that's all you've got at the moment. But there are other trader options that I would suggest over that one. Now we're going into the Sten. The Sten, even fully kitted, I would consider it more of a meme weapon. It's definitely one of the lower ends of the damage categories. Kind of an okay TTK, but honestly, when I've used it, it's been in a meme capacity. Fully kitted is the only time that I would use it, and obviously because it is available in the trader, that's the only kind of area that I would maybe suggest it would go up to the B, fully kitted. But honestly, I've seen people talk about the Sten. It's really cringe. It's not a good gun. I would not suggest a new player rely on it at all. Definitely don't rely on it as a strong weapon. Thompson, I would say, because it is readily available in the trader, does have attachments, the drum mag and the stock on it. If you're running around hip fire, I would say it's very strong. It's one of those guns that it's very flexible because you can do ADS, and obviously as you can see here, it's one of the stronger of the SMGs. So I would have to say that the Thompson unkitted, I would put it in the A's, bottom A's, A minuses, but in terms of it being fully kitted, I would say that that's where we put it, is in the top A category. It edges out the PPSH just because the PPSH doesn't really have the greatest amount of flexibility. It's better to use as an ADS, and only at super close range would I suggest using that gun in a hip fire capacity. We'll get into the Viper. As you guys saw in my latest video, the Viper is very strong. It's definitely not one of those guns that is high on the damage list, but in terms of how quickly it shoots and how many attachments you can put on it, I would say completely unattached. If you find it in a vault and it doesn't have the extended clip on it or the suppressor, I would say it's probably going to edge out the MP40, but as a fully kitted A+ category, maybe even S tier. But in terms of it being viable against other SMGs that I'm just going to be talking about shortly, I would probably still put it in the A+. I don't really want to put it in S tier. S tier is a bit too strong, but the Viper is a lot of fun to use, and I do suggest checking out that video if you haven't already. Now the suppressed Thompson, the Tommy Special, I would definitely put it in S tier. When that thing is fully kitted, while it is not readily available, you can only find it in the vault. Similar to the Viper, it is a lot of fun to use, and it has very strong capabilities. The Viper, as you can see, it's definitely on the lower end of the spectrum of damage that can be done, but the Thompson Special reigns supreme in terms of damage hits. The Thompson Special is just so versatile and so fun to use, especially when it is fully kitted, which is way more readily available than a fully kitted Viper, because it's all going to be relying on finding it in the vault, whereas you can buy the attachments for the Thompson in the traders. So I would put the Thompson Special in that category. Now the Mauser Special, I would probably have to put it in the B+ category, fully kitted. The smaller clip on it, 20 bullets, is definitely it leaves a lot to be desired, while the Red Baron makes it look really simple. This gun is definitely more of a meme weapon. I would say it's one of those guns that I could use, but I choose not to. Just like all of the other B and C categories, it is there, but I wouldn't necessarily rely on it in a fight. It's more of a secondary option as opposed to something that I would run as a primary weapon or in a very specific capacity. The custom 49, I had a fellow friend of mine that loves it, and when it came out, he obsessed over it, told me, go check it out, I think you'll really like it. I did not like it at all. I'm not a big burst fire gun type of person. I do appreciate the fact that it is a stronger ammo type, but I would still put it in maybe even closer to the C category, C plus, just because I'm not a huge fan. Yeah, it's definitely not something that I would necessarily think to put in that category. Other than C, it's just, I don't enjoy it. It's just one of those guns that is more of a distraction than is actually viable. Maybe in the hands of a bot, when they use it correctly and they hit their shots, it can be a bit more scary, but I'm not scared of it. It's not that big of a deal. Okay, well, we all know where this is going. The MAC-10 right now is the meta. It's one of those guns that when it has attachments or no attachments, it's very readily available. You can find it in prison. You sneeze and a bot will come and give you one. With the heavy barrel attachment or the suppressor that you find in the vaults, I would say that this gun is unbeatable in most situations, especially the heavy barrel for ADSing. If you laser somebody either in hip fire or in ADS, this gun is going to be one of the quickest TTKs in the game, and you can see it from some of the more aggressive players. They love to use the MAC-10, and it's one of those guns that's going to keep you safe, so I would definitely put that at the top. But I want to say that I have a feeling that this gun is probably going to get a little bit of a balance, so it might get lowered a bit. I'm hoping it goes down into the A category because it is so almost obsessively used, and I used to be in that same category as well. Like when the L1 used to be the meta, I used to run the L1 all the time because I knew I wouldn't die, and I always wanted to come out on top. I played the game with a bit more ego than I do nowadays, and I definitely was in that trap of saying, wow, this gun is definitely gonna keep me safe. I'm gonna clap literally everybody, and the MAC-10 is that. The MAC-10 is almost even more so that because it is so brainless. It's a gun that you don't really have to think about. If you come home from a long day, pick up the MAC-10 and you're gonna live a lot longer. Now, if I were to choose though, I would say that the Thompson Special is definitely my favorite, just because of the fact that it is so fun, so versatile, and it isn't so brainless. There is a lot of thought that needs to go into your engagements, whereas the MAC-10 is you just kind of bide your time, duck your head, run around corners, and as soon as you get within a 5-meter radius of somebody, they're dead. It's just easy mode. It's so stupid. Not to say the players that use it are, I get it. I get the understanding that you don't want to lose your gear. The MAC-10 though, it's a bit too strong, and it kind of defeats the purpose of playing the game a little bit. Now, if I were to rank the Mosin in this category, I would still probably put it in S tier, just because of all the capacities that it has for one shot hitting people. If you know how to use the weapon, I would say it's definitely S tier. If we're talking about the Mauser, it's probably going to go just a shade in the middle of B, maybe B minus when it has the full attachments. But these other guns, I would say it would probably live in this B to A category, just because it's more of a meme weapon and it's not readily available. The ammo for the flare pistol is very, very subpar, very hard to find, and we'll probably say that the well rod goes in the C plus category if we're ranking it in there. Now, for the next stage of things, I'll probably talk about rifles and keep a couple of the SMGs, the Mosin, probably keep the A tier, S tier, because I don't really run B to D at all, so we'll hit that up in a second here. Okay, so in the last installment of this, we're going to talk about the rifles and some of the other weapons that I haven't necessarily talked about, largely because I would say some of them are just so bad that I wouldn't even put them on this list. I would never go and run them. Maybe we'll go from the bottom up so that we can talk about some of these, and then we'll incorporate some of the more higher tier SMGs in the categories that have just been talked about. So I did a video on the China Lake. I think the China Lake at the point of that video was really way too strong. It was one of those guns that is very difficult to find, and when you do find it, you need ammo type that is also very difficult to find. I would say because it is so slow to reload or to re-engage a next shot, that it's probably going to be in the C tier. I'd never run it. I hardly ever see it in games, probably because it is so rare, and it is more of a distraction, I would say, to the newer players. It's one of those guns that I would hope is probably going to stay in a lower category, because it can be overpowered if used correctly. Now, if you do have a team of if you do have a team of thumpers, I would say it's probably going to go up into the S tier category, but that's only because there's a team of you, whereas you could just use mini thumpers to great effect. Now, I would say in terms of the mini thumper, it's probably going to go into the A category along with similar things like the Mosin. It's a great sidearm. It doesn't take up a slot. You can use it for maximum long range attacks where you hit somebody either after peppering them with bullets, so they're already low on health, and then the splash damage from a mini thumper can finish the job, or vice versa. You start with the mini thumper, get them down to a low level, push them with maybe a hip fire weapon or something that is more close range, and finish the job off with that. Now, the BAR I would say is probably also in the A category because it is so readily available. You can craft it. It's one of those things that you do need to finish a couple more of your 0 to heroes or do a lot of your objectives to be able to unlock it. But in terms of a gun that is high ammo caliber, the 300 mag type weapons are going to be really strong. I like the buffs that they did to it, the balancing that they added. It's a lot easier to use the sights nowadays. And if you hit 2 headshots with this thing, I believe it is a really strong weapon. And I just realized that we are not in the same category here. Okay. So yeah, the bar is definitely going to be higher on the list. It's definitely going to be one of the instant headshots until we start getting down into the level 8 category. And then it's going to be a really short TTK. Once we start getting into the level 13s, the TTK on that thing is still 0.283, which is definitely one of the better TTKs of the higher end. And then even the compensated one does a little bit more damage, which I actually didn't know. I didn't know that it hit harder. It's kind of like a suppressor. So that's always good to know. Definitely check out this compendium because it is a very good resource for understanding the differences of the weapons comparative to like maybe a compensated M1 para or a suppressed M1 para or an uncomped unsuppressed and what their TTK levels are. Okay, so yes, I would say fully kitted, the bar, because it is so readily available, I would probably put it in the A-. It's not one of those weapons that I use very often, but it's also not one that I would certainly shy away from. So I would say that the bar is definitely high on that list. The Bren is one of those weapons that kind of gets closer to a B for me. The recoil on this gun, I would say, okay, B+. The recoil on this gun is pretty insane. I've seen a lot of players use it, either, you know, they main it because they really do well with it, or they just don't use it at all because of the recoil issues. There is also the issue of the actual magazine getting in the way of your ADS, and also the ADS, even if it's fully kitted with the barrel mag on top, and you've got the spider sights, the flat gun spider sights, I would still say that it's not very balanced yet. It might need a bit of an improvement. It's not necessarily lined up perfectly, and the ADS time to bring the gun up to be able to see people is not one of the better ones. But if you do hit your shots, the Bren is a very strong weapon, I would say. It's got a very good TTK, especially if we're talking about the TTK of the BAR. It actually has a better TTK, but it is a little bit less of a damage per shot in terms of that. So I would say that it definitely gets edged by the BAR. And also a fully kitted Bren is one of those things that you need to find in a vault. And generally the availability of a Bren, unless you kill a bot, is definitely not that high. So you have to go in a Navy outpost to find it. Now the Delisle, I don't know what happened to the Delisle. It used to be okay. I never really liked it. I'm not a huge fan of the single fire rifles, and this thing is now a bolt action, I believe. So I would put this in the category of a major distraction. It is readily available on Navy outpost. You can't craft it. The ammo is very readily available. You can craft it. But the Delisle Carbine is so bad, I would even put it in the D category. I just think it's such a dumb weapon. Now, in terms of the DP, I would probably say that it's just a little shade under the Bren. While it is a little bit more readily available, it is still something that you have to find in raid or in a supply crate, and the recoil on it is insane. However, I have ran with players and homies before that do really like the DP, and I would say that the DP is definitely something that if you can control the recoil on it, it is actually a lot of fun. And personally, I would probably choose to meme run with the DP over the Bren, just for the fact that it is such a kooky weapon. So personally, I would say the DP edges the Bren just for the sake of the sights being a bit better. There's no magazine that gets in the way. But maybe if it's a fully kitted Bren, maybe the fully kitted Bren does edge the DP. So keep that in mind. Now the jackhammer. The jackhammer, as well as most other shotguns, are really, really bad. Another one of those distraction categories. The shotguns have gone through a bit of a nerf recently. I know people talk about the jackhammer in the sense that it is very high magazine. It is one of those weapons that does a lot of damage per shot. You know, you only need 2 pellets to hit somebody in the head without a helmet on to get them to a category, but you need 7 with a level 13. And good luck hitting 7 pellets into a head from a player that is, you know, a level 13 juicer. You got to be a corner camper. You got to be very opportunistic. And if you're shooting that thing without ADSing, or even ADSing actually, you're going to be looking at the ceiling after 3 or 4 shots unless you really, really know how to control the recoil on that thing. The shotguns are so bad right now. I can't justify pretty much using any of them. I used to really, really like using the trench gun before it got a nerf along with the Terminator. The Terminator was in the stage where the L1 used to be and where the MAC-10 is right now. It is just so overpowered and overused and abused that it had to be nerfed. And unfortunately, the trench gun also fell within that category, even though I personally don't think that it does need a nerf. I think that it's one of those things that it should stay where it used to be, and if it ever does, I'm hoping that it falls within the B to A category, because it is such a fun, unique weapon to use. And you would think close quarter space combat that a shotgun would be viable. Maybe not the Terminator, because that thing would one-shot headshot people from a fair distance. But in terms of the spread and the viability of a trench gun, unfortunately, it's more of a distraction. Maybe it's a C+ or B-. But in terms of looking at what's already up there, I would say it's C+. It's just a distraction weapon, and it's definitely not very fun to use. But I hope I'm wrong, and I hope that they change that at some point, because the trench gun used to be a lot of fun. You know, quick peeking, shooting somebody, running away, rotating, quick peeking, shooting somebody, running away, just being a total menace. You know, it was just... I had so much fun with that gun, and I really wish I could relive those days, because it wasn't that strong, but it was fairly strong, and I think that the trench gun should live in that realm. But alas, most video games, multiplayer, PvP, first-person shooters, the shotguns are generally not given the same credibility. But there's also an argument to be said that shotguns don't really do damage against armor, so maybe you know, in the lower categories the trench gun is viable, but in terms of a juicer level 13, the trench gun shouldn't do any damage. So, you know, it's to each their own, but I used to really enjoy it, and I wish it would come back, because it would just add a new layer of fun to the game that used to be there. And if there's a movement shooter mentality, hipfire guns are there. Why can't the trench gun be there as a different type of ADSing hip firing gun? But that's just my personal opinion. Maybe it'll never get a buff again. Maybe it'll stay in that category, and I'll just have to live with that. Now the K1 Assault, this one is a very readily available weapon. I would probably put it higher than the BAR and the Mini Thumper, even though it's not really the same. You can't really compare the two. But the K1, because it is so readily available, you can buy everything from the trader. It does have a little bit higher of a rate of fire than a BAR, and it does do a little bit more for me in gunfights. I would say that it edges the BAR for time to kill. I think that it has a pretty good recoil, and I think it's a lot of fun to use. I know a lot of people use it, and it's a very reliable weapon. So even though it is lower on the category of maybe fighting somebody as a level 13, if we're talking about it fighting most ammo type or most armors or most helmets, I would say that the K1 is definitely one of those more fun weapons. Unkitted, maybe we're talking like B minus. So if you find it in a vault without any attachments on it, I would generally just take the ammo and leave it there. It's not one of those guns that I would normally run unless it's fully kitted. But in terms of a gun that I would likely use more often than not, it would probably sit within the middle A category. I wouldn't say that it's like one of those guns that I'm like dying to use. Now this next one might be controversial. Some people really swear by the Karasa, but this gun is so bad, dude. I'm not a fan of this gun whatsoever. I think that there's certain times when I've seen this gun being used and there's a bullet that just goes off somewhere. It's like, it's a random RNG, very vertical shot or a horizontal shot that just goes off in the distance compared to the rest of it. It's very bouncy. It would be more like the MP40 to me of the rifle categories. It's not something that I've been able to master very well. However, it's one of those guns that I'm not very good at fighting against. I've definitely gotten to an area where I'm really close up to somebody with a Karasa, even though I knew they had a Karasa, and they killed me with it, especially with the suppressor on it. I would say that the Karasa is definitely one of those guns that is going to be on the higher end of the damage categories. Even though it is lower on the list here, the suppressed Karasa TTK is one of the best, if not the best rifles in the game. So if it's one of those things that you enjoy using Karasa, then go for it. But personally, I think that it's almost edging to the point of being a distraction weapon. It's not one of those guns that I would ever pick up. Most of the 7.62 weapons I actually don't really use anymore. And it's not that to say that you might not agree with me. You might actually like the 7.62 guns. But personally, I would put this in the B minus category just for the sake of I never run this gun. It's not something that I really enjoy. Now, we've already talked about we've already talked about shotguns quite extensively, but I would say that the Liberator, personally speaking, is a little bit better than the Jackhammer because it does give you the expectation that you only have 4 shots. With the Jackhammer, you have 10, but you are a total wild card. You're flying around all over the place with recoil. This gun is not reliable to me. I would definitely say it's a distraction, but it's a little bit better, personally speaking, than the Jackhammer. The Jackhammer is definitely just gets edged a little bit because I've died more times to the Liberator than I have to the Jackhammer, even though I would definitely say don't pick up any shotguns. They're all trash. The Flamethrower. I've had a lot of fun with the Flamethrower. I would have to say it's probably the B plus to maybe even A minus because it is not easily and readily available. I would say that it's probably B plus for a newer player. However, there are a couple of videos. There's a couple of hipfire movement videos that I've got posted where the Flamethrower really comes out strong for me. It is such a really fun weapon. And the Flamethrower generally does an incredible amount of damage. The M16, I would say, is definitely going to be better than the K1. It probably edges lower on the scale if it's not fully kitted. But it is more readily available as a non-fully kitted gun. However, when you do find it in the vaults and it has the suppressor or even the scope, if you like scope weapons, personally I don't, I would say that it's a very strong weapon. When it is suppressed, it does edge out the K1. The TTK is definitely really strong. Even without it suppressed, the M16, the TTK on it is insanely good. If you're really good at clicking quickly in single fire, I would suggest it as a good weapon. I don't really like burst fire weapons. I've already said this before, so I would definitely edge away from that. But some people swear by the burst fire on this gun. If you can hit your headshots and you burst fire somebody from a close range, I would say that the recoil is going to be negligible, and you're definitely going to get the kill pretty much instantaneously. That being said, I don't really run the M16 a whole heck of a lot, so I would say that it's something that is more of a gun that might even be in the A minus category because it is so hard to find. So it's not one of those things that a new player should necessarily rely on. However, if you do find it in the vault with the suppressor on it, it is called the unicorn for a reason. It's very rare, and it's one of those things that you can either trade for people that really like it, or you can give it a shot for yourself and see what you think. The Johnson is one of those weapons that just edges closer to a place where I'd never use it. I don't know if I've already spoken about this yet, but the single fire rifles, I would say that to me, they're more of a distraction, but I know that some of my friends that really like using the Johnson would probably implore me to put it in more of a B- category, because it is one of those guns that is more readily available, and it does one-shot headshot quite a lot of things, and it's on the top of the list of highest damage against a level 13 helmet, and it does reign supreme in most categories for two-shot headshotting, the helmet category here. So I would say if you're really good at head clicking and you like single fire rifles, go for it. And if you are to choose, it would probably be this one over any of the others. However, because it is a lower clip and only has 10 bullets, it's not one of those weapons that I really enjoy using. Same with the SVT. It's another one of those guns that even if it does have the huge barrel drum mag on it and the barrel attachment, the suppressor, it's still one of those things that it's a single fire rifle, and I'm not a huge fan. But if I were to rank them comparatively, I would probably choose the suppressed SVT over the Johnson, just for the sake of the sights on it, and it has a bigger magazine size if you do get the attachments for it. But again, it's not really one of those guns that is readily available. You can buy it in the trader compared to the Johnson. But again, you guys know my stance on the single fire rifles, so it's probably going to be in the B- category of guns that are there and that are a novelty. It is probably going to be something that I won't run very often, or is closer to a distraction. There's been a lot of newer players that I see play the game and they use the SVT. It is a scary weapon. If you hit your shots, it's really good. But if you don't have your sensitivity figured out and you're just starting out in the game, I don't suggest using single fire rifles very often. However, I do like the para because it is more readily available in the trader. It's one of those things that if you do have the attachments for it, it is a lot of fun to use, compensated or suppressed, as well as I think there's an extended clip that you can find in the vault. And it's fun to use in hipfire as well. I would say it's still edging on the idea that is probably more of a distraction, but if you're a newer player, I would say give it a shot. I would probably put it higher than the Johnson, maybe higher than the SVT, but because of the damage done, it's really not that great. So it's probably going to be closer to like a distraction or behind these two other rifles. But again, because it does have that hipfire capability, I would say that it's closer to being more versatile than the Johnson or the SVT. So personally speaking, it would edge those two out. But because it is a single fire and it's a low damage weapon, it's definitely one of those things that it is getting close to being a distraction. Now the M50, that's probably going to be a little bit more of a heavy hitter. It did take a recent nerf or a rebalancing. So it's not necessarily one of those things that is going to be super great. It has a small magazine size of 12 bullets. It is really good with hip fire. So again, because of those capacities and the comparability of it being the para and all the things that I've already discussed, and in the interest of keeping this video not too breadthy, I would say that it's probably going to be better in my sense of it being flexible and more easily readily available in the traders. It would probably go into a category just edging out the para, and even, yeah, the Karasa I guess can stay there, but honestly, this whole area of guns, I don't suggest. Personally, I would never bring them into raid unless you've got to do your 0 to hero and you're using your para, or you're in a bind and you really need to use the M50. But I don't really pick up the Karasa or run that very often. Oh, the MG42. The MG42 and the heavy MG, we're probably going to put those in the same category. Do they have much of a difference? It doesn't look like it. They have this pretty much the same stats. The reload is a little bit quicker on the heavy MG, so I assume that it would be actually edging the MG42 a little bit, but we'll just talk about them in the same breath. They're not that great. I have a lot of experiences where I've died to an MG because I was in close proximity and I had no idea that they had an MG until it was too late. So it's one of those guns that if somebody's pushing you like crazy and you've got another weapon, I would say if you're in the imminent danger category and they're coming close and they've got a MAC-10, pull out your MG, you might even win it. But the RNG on this gun is not reliable. It is more of a distraction. It is a very strong weapon. If you hit your shots, you can really quickly mow down a whole room of people, or if you're holding a doorway. But in terms of it being something that's reliable, I've definitely felt like it's one of those things that is probably going to be higher than a Crossa in terms of using it more memes. But and yeah, because I guess the magazine is larger and it's more readily available, it's probably one of those guns that is there, but I just never pick it up, just like the DP. Maybe it goes a little bit higher than the DP, but the DP you can at least ADS, so I'm going to say that the MG is probably on that category. The sawed-off D category, the sawed-off shotgun is so trash. Never pick it up, never use it. I feel bad for you if you come to it in Raider mode. However, in Raider mode, they don't have stronger armor types, but never use that gun in Marauders unless you're in Raider mode and you get given it to you. But don't pick it up. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of space. Even as a sidearm, I wouldn't pick it up. In terms of the Terminator, again, probably only use it in Raider mode, but it is going to be a stronger weapon to use. Maybe not as good as a Carbine, but it's definitely going to be up there for weapons that are more of a major distraction and a total waste of time, in my opinion. The STG, probably S tier. I know it got a bit of a nerf in the sense that the ADS time is a little bit slower, but it is such a reliable weapon. It is super clean. The sights on it are so nice. I really like the STG. I would say that it's one of those things that is more readily available, especially if you breach into a cap ship. A lot of players run it. It's one of those guns that is just super versatile. Definitely one of those guns that I would rely on if I didn't get so bored of using it and wanted to try other things. It's not flexible in the sense that it doesn't have very good hip fire, which I think is more of the meta. So in terms of maybe having like a Thompson Special or a MAC-10, those are going to be higher up in that category. So we'll plop those up there. But the STG is absolutely still in the meta, in my opinion, especially at long range. If you're in a penal colony or terraformer situation, this gun is a very strong weapon. And it is middle of the road, but in terms of a weapon that I would run in a raid and suggest for newer players, while it does take up a lot of space, it's almost the size of a heavy MG. It's definitely one of those ones that you don't want to ignore. It's a very strong weapon. Now the SVU dart rifle, I don't really like it. Again, it's one of those single fire rifle types that just is more of a distraction for me. I would even put it in the C+ category, but because it does fit so well within the single fire rifles, I would probably put it higher. It does only have 10 darts per clip, so it's probably going to be in the same category as the Johnson. And I've never really enjoyed using it. I picked it up once and put it down immediately. I tried to shoot people from long distance. I find that the recoil and everything is too insane. It's just too jumpy, and it's one of those things. It's like the heavy MG in the sense that it just doesn't have that reliability, or the Crossa even. It doesn't have that reliability that I depend on. So we'll just keep it there. Since we're on the dart ammo category already, I would probably put the APS rifle above the STG just because it doesn't use as much noise. The noise on the APS is way smaller. It is not readily available. You have to find it in the vault, and I would highly suggest having the stock on it. But if you can get it with the stock and you do have enough dart ammo, which is not easy to find. It's a bit more of a grind to keep this thing stocked. It's a bit more of a rarity, but personally I would probably rate it higher than the STG just for the sake of the quietness of it. I would think that it's a bit stronger in the sense that if you're shooting from across the map, not everybody on the map is going to know there's an STG over there, and all the chads are going to come running, or just, you know that you're there and be scared of you or what have you. So in the sense of a PvP fight, I would prefer the APS. Also the psychological aspect of it, where the darts are flying by you and you hear thoo, 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 thoo. That's scary as hell. STG is a very scary weapon, but if you can scare somebody and surprise them with the APS, I would say that it's more of a deadly, silent and deadly shooter than an STG. And personally speaking, I would probably choose it over the STG. I think it's the same size storage wise, so if I had the choice, I would probably always sell the STG because it's super available. But if I found an APS with a stock, I would definitely consider that one of the higher tier rarities that I would really like to keep around in my inventory. Now the stoner really is a tough one for me. I think I really want the stoner to be up here. I think that it probably right now, if we're talking about versatility, it's probably going to be edged by the Mac 10 because the Mac 10 heavy barrel ADS is really strong. But I really, really, really like the stoner. The stoner is so much fun to use. It's actually quite easy to find. Personally speaking, I can usually find it in more of the red footlockers or on a table or something like that. I do run into them quite a bit where I have too many stoners in my inventory already, so I don't pick it up, but I take the ammo because the 5.56 ammo is one of my favorite ammo types. If you can control the recoil on the stoner is such a fun weapon. I really like the sights on it. I really like how enjoyable it is and how scary it is. It's the STG, but on meth. It shoots so much quicker, and I want to say that the stoners, wow, okay, so the damage per shot is actually not that great, but the TTK is one of the better on here, just getting edged by the L1. So in terms of a compensated L1, I would have to put that just below the stoner. I think that even though it did get a bit of a nerf, the time to kill with that gun, it is super clean, really fun to use. It sounds deadly. If you can land your 2 headshots with that thing, it's game over. Same with the stoner. Although the stoner, actually, you need 3 headshots. Okay, so I didn't know that, but I would still choose the stoner over the L1 just because of how quickly this thing can shoot. While the L1 does have a better TTK, I think the only reason it has a better TTK is because it needs 3 headshots, but it's by 0.008 difference. So the psychological aspect, the reason that it is more readily available, I would edge the stoner over the L1. The L1 is actually kind of rare because you need the compensator and the extended clip on it to make it comparable, in my opinion. But the L1 is still a very fun weapon, so I would definitely put that up there. If we're talking about that Moss, definitely a distraction weapon. Not a great picture for this, but it's in the new single fire rifle. I would never pick up this weapon unless you're trying to grab the 7.62. It only has 10 bullets in the clip, but never pick that thing up. Never grab the 7.62 out of it. If I see the MAS, get it out of here. It's trash. You know, it's high up there, guys. The time to kill on it is 0.4. It has really good damage. I never have died to it. I never see stronger players using it. I don't know what's up with it. They've just introduced it. There might be a difference in the future, but for right now, let's just say that this thing is in the distraction category. The EM2, I would probably put that just below probably the A-, maybe even the B+. When they give attachments to this gun, if they give an extended clip on this thing, it is going to be an absolute shredder. The EM2 is a very strong weapon. It only has 20 bullets though, so it's definitely not as fun or reliable. But if we're talking about a gun that has good time to kill, I've definitely gotten killed by the EM2 in a very quick fashion, to the point where I'm like surprised that I've died so quickly. 0.24 is very strong, and I think that if they do add attachments to it, this is probably going to become one of the meta weapons. I don't really like the ADS sights on it very much. But if it's one of those guns that you kind of just barely want to meme with, or it's available for you, it is more readily available than most weapons. I would say that the EM2 is definitely going to be in the A- category, very close to being in the S category if you do get any attachments for it, because I assume it's going to be an insane weapon. Now, I haven't really covered any of how quick some of the reloads are, because most of the time the reloads are they're pretty negligible on most of the A and S tier weapons, so we won't really be discussing that. But if we're talking about one of the faster reloads, it's definitely going to be in the middle of the pack, whereas the K1, because it is a 5.56 weapon and it is a quick reload, I would say that it edges the EM2. Now we're getting really close here. We're talking about the Mosin Obrez. I would still probably put that in the S tier because it is such a strong weapon. If you can one-shot headshot a level 11 or below, I would say that it's probably just on the tip of being A+, but it's S tier minus in my opinion. And you can see that in many of the videos out there. It's a great sidearm. If you can have, you know, that as your pistol slot, heavy shield on your back to protect you while you're running away, and one of the S tier weapons, you're in a pretty good stead. It might even be one of those things where it rivals the Mini Thumper, but because the Mini Thumper ammo is so hard to find, or is not as easily readily available, I would say that the Mini Thumper gets edged by the Mosin Obrez for the sake that it can be crafted, and the 54R is more easily available. So I would probably put the fully kitted Viper above these other weapons. Maybe not the Thumper, so to speak, but because it is so fun to use and is one of the quickly favorited SMG categories, I would probably put it in the A+ category. Even more so than the M16, I would probably edge that just because it is so versatile. Not necessarily because you can aim down the sights, but because it is hip fire, you can do a lot of movement, and it also shoots from a very far distance, and it shoots very quickly. The Thompson, probably between the flamethrower here, so we're just going to go quickly through that. The PPSH probably edges out the Bren and the DP. The Uzi, I might put in this category as well. And that's pretty much it. Wow. Okay, so that was incredibly breadthy. I don't know how long this video is going to be, but if you stuck it out and you really enjoyed it, definitely hit that like, that subscribe, and comment in the section below what you guys think I did right, what you guys think I did wrong, what you want to see differently. And yeah, definitely, hopefully this is one of those videos that gets a lot of likes, gets a lot of views. I have no idea. It's definitely one of the first of many, hopefully, where I talk just to the camera and we kind of shoot the breeze. And then maybe if it doesn't go very well, it might be one of those things that I just do once and never do again. Hopefully this video doesn't get outdated by the guilds update, which comes out hopefully in a week. But if it does, I'll try and do a bit of an update on it, with maybe some of the stuff that's already been put up here. I'll do a little screenshot right now so that we've got this sorted, and we've already got a list of guns that are already on file, so that I can maybe add some things or overlap some things and move some images around. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching, and as always, I appreciate the support, and ciao for now.